College of Arts and Science. Admissions open. For more details, log into sacas.ac.in.
A happy evening to one and all presented here. I am Dr. A. Shivashankari, Associate Professor, Department of English. It gives me immense pleasure to invite you all for this third day of international webinar on recent trends in management conducted by School of Commerce and Management in association with AZ Innovation PT Limited, Singapore, on the topic leading people through storytelling. The world is full of diamonds and gems. We have one of those here to build our skill. On behalf of SA College of Arts and Science, I invite Mr. Prakash Chugani, certified NLP practitioner, coach, facilitator, and adjunct professor, SP Jain School of Global Management and XLRI, and also Major Rajan sir and Satish Kumar sir and all the participants. Now, I request Dr. S. Pratap to extend his welcome note.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. Myself, Dr. S. Pratap, Associate Professor, Department of Mathematics, and I feel privileged to welcome you all on behalf of SA College of Arts and Science. We are indeed delighted and proud to welcome you all for 1 week online international webinar on recent trends in management between 19th August and 27th August 2021. I deem it a great honor to welcome our vibrant correspondent P. Venkatesh Raja sir, Director Dr. Sai Satyavati Madam, Principal Dr. Malathi Silvakumar, SA College of Arts and Science. I express my heartfelt welcome to our eminent chief guest, Mr. Prakash Chugani, Associate, ACE Innovation, Private Limited, Singapore. I also welcome respected heads of all departments, learned faculty members, and beloved participants. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your invite. Now it's time to introduce our guest. I request Mr. R. Satish Kumar, VP Strategic Alliances and Operations, AC Innovation, Singapore, to introduce our guest for today's program.
Thank you, madam. It's a great pleasure to join this conference, and it's been wonderful. It's understood, so we've been doing a wonderful conference and received tremendous response from the teaching fraternity. Thank you, and good evening, one and all. On behalf of ACE Innovation Private Limited Singapore and ACE Innovation India, we welcome all the participants for this evening. It's a great pleasure to associate with SA College of Arts and Science. And on behalf of ACE Innovation and SA College of Arts and Science, I also welcome Mr. Prakash Chugani. Mr. Prakash, welcome on behalf of ACE Innovation. Thank you for joining us once again. And also take this opportunity to welcome our founder and CEO, Major Rajan is there, and Dr. Neena Gayatri, our COO, she's there. And Dr. Neena would introduce Mr. Prakash to the audience. ACE Innovation, in a nutshell, ACE Innovation is one of the largest organization which organizes World Storytelling Championship, and not only that, so ACE Innovation also promotes the culture of storytelling amongst the teaching fraternity and also young children. So this is what we do, and to give this initiative, we have joined with the Tamil Nadu Teachers Technical University in India, in particular in Tamil Nadu. We have trained more than 18,000 teachers and professors, and we also joined with the SC, ERT, and EIT faculties for training school teachers. And we have done a number of training sessions for the children and the young adult groups on storytelling. So this is what we have done, and it's been a great journey for the last few years. And for any detail, I think we would leave the ACE Innovation URL on the chat box. You may go through that. And I request Dr. Neena Gayatri to introduce Mr. Prakash to the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Satish. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We at ACE Innovation are born from stories. We create stories, mingle into stories, and have become a story. And this wonderful young story brings to you stories and storytellers from all corners of the earth. Today, we brought to you a story. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a man with the gift of the gab and loads of intelligence, a people person. It's put him in the limelight and raised him head and shoulders above the crowd. With more than 10,000 hours of executive development under his belt, Prakash has inspired the transformation of over 2,500 individuals across 11 countries and is still counting. Commerce, marketing, HR, name it. He is an NLP practitioner certified by ABNLP, an assessor certified by SHL and Thomas International. He is an associate certified coach with International Coaching Federation, holding dual certificates from Australia and America, a much sought after teacher. He is also an adjunct professor at SP Jain School of Global Management and XLRI, which is India's #1 private B school. His career in business development in India just started joining and continued in Dubai with 7 years of hardcore business development experience under his belt. He was given the opportunity to rise into the management cadre, where he proved to be highly successful and effective in delivering the bottom line results. This led him to take on the overall functioning and performance of various profit centers. Realization hit, and that changed his course of life. He has this innate ability to help others develop towards excellence. This made him switch careers, forayed into human resources, donned a new hat as the general manager of HRD at Dulsco, a leading people and environmental solution company with 10,000 employees. It was during his tenure and initiative that the company ranked amongst the top 10 great places to work in UAE for the first time. To bring focus and to magnify his span of influence, he founded E3, EQ, training to engage, empower, and energize people. He primarily facilitates leadership, negotiation, and sales development programs for mid and senior level managers. Hold that breath. A peek into some of the companies that he's trained: BDO, Hilton Worldwide, Rotana, Emirates Flying Catering, Yokogawa, Ashok Leyland, L&T, Vedanta Group, A1T Group, AI Guhare Group, Isa Selek Ajang, Mohammed bin Rashid Al Mahkom City. He believes that learning, development, and growth is done best by taking the inside out approach to master one's mind before gaining master over skills and other people. A practitioner of meditation for 20 years, he now has delivered various self-help talks and facilitates seminars, conferences in audience in Africa, Australia, Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Sri Lanka, USA, UK, Singapore, and India. Ladies and gentlemen, here today to speak to our minds while touching the wisdom of our hearts. He's here to engage, empower, and energize. A man with many varied stories to tell, Prakash Chugani. Sir, our minds are open.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Nina. It's lovely to know that our minds are open. And that's the only thing that is going to support us in every aspect of life. When I'm actually in front of educators, when I'm with educators, when I'm, associated with colleges and universities, my mind takes me back to my school days. I remember I wanted to be this good debater. I wanted to be a good elocutionist. I wanted to be a person who could stand up and talk in public. And I would do that from my standard 7, but I wouldn't have the courage to do that. I'd say, okay, next year, 8th standard, I wouldn't still go up. 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, I just wouldn't want to go up and speak in front of public. I just had this fear that what if I fail? What do people tell? I mean, I just wanted to protect whatever reputation I thought I had, and I didn't want that to break or to be shattered by me going up on stage and failing. But I had that urge to be a good speaker. And so there was this, a fight that was happening internally. And I was wondering, when am I going to ever be able to possibly do what I wanted to do? Then came my day in university. And that's what's reminding me when I'm with colleges and universities, this is what I remember so strongly. So I was in university and I said, you know what, Prakash, enough is enough. If I don't do this now, I will never do this in my life. And I'll always be that person who aspires to be a good speaker, who believes he has a lot of good content, but I just can't get myself to express to an audience that probably is hungry to know. And then when that particular bulb just came on, I realized that my only fear was a fear of failure. So I said, okay, let me fail fast and let me learn quickly so I can move quickly. So then we had this next debate competition my first year when I was doing my BCom. And so I quickly took up this interesting speech that I had written myself. I went up for this debate competition. I was somewhere in the middle. There were about maybe 20 odd participants, and I was probably 10th or 11th. I remember taking the script in front of me, and I had to read it out to people, right? So I just had the script, and my eyes were glued into the script, and nobody could see me. They could only see the script. And I just read the entire speech. All they could see was one piece of paper. They didn't see my face, my eyes, nothing. All they saw was one script. And then as soon as I finished my speech, I left that script, I thanked them, and I walked away. Now, I probably came last in that debate competition, if there was such a thing, like coming 20th, I would have got that 20th place in that competition. But that was not the point, because that was a new beginning for me. And that started off something like magic inside, because I got rid of my fear of speaking in public. So from that day onwards, I didn't need another piece of paper because I knew the stuff I was writing. I knew I could speak, but I just wanted to free myself from the fear. And then from then on, every debate competition that happened in the university or happened outside, I remember, they would have, regional engineering college at that point in time, and this was in Mysore. They would have a debate competition. I would jump on my foot. You would have Times of India doing a speech on, it used to be an extemporaneous speaking off the cuff. Go there and deliver. I would look at every possible opportunity to go up and speak. And by the time I reached my third year in my university, I was selected amongst this university. So we had about 30 odd colleges there. So I was selected amongst those to represent the Mysore University in Sapru House in Delhi for All India University debate competition. And so that was the way that I was able to progress so quickly, just with me getting rid of one thing, which was my fear. And that was not the only thing. I started noticing that how getting rid of this one thing that was holding me back, not just in speaking, but in so many other things in life, helped me in other areas as well. So this helped me go into the Rotaract Club, and I would actually take on some speaking roles in the Rotaract Club. People will actually start connecting very deeply with me. My final year in university, I was the president of the Rotaract Club of our college. And then I would also, in my final year, I didn't know how there's a connection, but somehow I was not the best hockey player, and I used to play a lot of hockey, but I captained the hockey team of my university in my final year as well. So we had all these wonderful people from Coorg, they were the best hockey players. So I'd go and ask my coach, I say, why are you making me the player? I mean, the captain when you have the best players. And I remember some matches I wouldn't even play. I would be standing out, but I was a captain. So it was just that they felt something about me that they wanted me to be the captain of that team. And I think we did quite a pretty job in hockey as well. And we did some fantastic projects in the Rotaract Club. We would go to the Home for the Aged, we'd go and do some paper collection, sell it, get money, funds, and use it for some very good causes. But a lot of wonderful things I did in my university. And so these are the days that really come so strong with me when I actually am here with SA. So let me ask you a question. When I share the story of you about me, what do you think about me? What comes to your mind? What stands out to you as some of the qualities? Now, I'm not sure if you can type into a chat box. I would love to see that if it's possible. Or if you can't, can somebody just unmute and say, what are some things that stand out? So, Mr. Satish, are the audience able to type in and share some things?
Let me check. Ms. Priya, is that
No, sir, chat, yes, they can type in the chat box. Otherwise, participants,
Okay.
please unmute yourself and you can answer the question.
The question is, what are the qualities that stand out after hearing my story about the days in school and college?
So there was a connection between our own stories. We used to, I mean, when you were saying about the stories, I mean, your practical stories to us, we were recollecting, I was recollecting what happened in my college and college times.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that, Priya. Priya, can you just type a note in your chat box, because I don't see any chat box here. So please, if you say, just say a hello so I can see it, and maybe others can also see it. It's very difficult for me to find the chat box.
So what I felt was you were able to overcome that fear when you really faced it. That I was able to feel that when you really expressing, trying to say that the fear that didn't, even though you had the talent in you of speaking on stage, but you had that fear. But once you overcome that fear, you were able to identify yourself, and people were able to recognize, feel something that's something in you, and that made you to come up much faster. That's what I felt in what you said.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. That's lovely. So,
Prakash,
okay.
I felt that, it's all in the mind. If you decide to do something, you can do something, and there's nothing that anybody cannot do. If we just think we can, we can.
Okay, possibility. If you think you can, you can. Okay, great. So thank you. Thank you. And so, yeah, Satish, I heard that were you trying to say something?
No, I was just trying to share. Everything is an experience. Definitely, when we get into it, you will have a lot of failures to learn things actually. So that's my experience. I want to put that way. Better get into it to fail to learn more things.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. So when you hear the story about Prakash, what do you think of Prakash? Dora, Satish, Dr. Nina, anyone?
I think Prakash is human.
Human, okay.
Prakash sir?
And
yes, please go ahead.
This is Neha. Good evening, sir.
Yes,
I just felt that you are a risk taker. The reason why I'm telling a risk taker is because as a human, when we know that failure is something which all of us are scared of. So knowing the failure and then going ahead, and especially when you're talking about the speaking skills, I can easily relate to this because I love speaking on the stage. And when the crowd is more, I love to speak more and more and more and make it much more interesting. So the point is, when you're having a stage fear, going and facing and knowing that maybe I will be a failure in the first time or in the second time, but still I will succeed is something that I felt that you are a risk taker because you are ready to go down just to accept success in the near future. And second thing is you had belief on yourself. Though you were taking a risk in the beginning, in the times of your graduation, but then still you found that in the future I will definitely have success because you know already your strengths. You were very clear about your weakness. So that is what I felt about you. You were very clear with your SWOT analysis. In simple.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very descriptive, Sneha. Thank you so much for that. So yeah, let me take this forward from here. This, what I shared with you, is called a connection story. And what a connection story does is, like everybody else said, they kind of they're able to have similar ways of connecting very strongly and deeply with you. Before that, when you hear about my introduction, you hear so many things about Prakash, who has done this, that, he's achieved here, that, and the other thing. I'm not sure how close that makes us feel. I'm not sure how well it makes me connect with you. But when I share a story like this, there's a very different connection that I have with each of you now. A very different connection. Why? Because I'm like you, you're like me. We are together in the same journey. And so there's a very different connect that we actually have the moment you listen to the story. So these are connection stories. But what the connection story also does is it brings out a few qualities about you, which is your credibility. So you may look at me as a risk taker. You may look at me as somebody who is futuristic, as a person who can see things, a person who has courage, a person who's not scared of failure, a person who's been able to Let's say, what else? Some of them spoke about a person who's a good communicator. All those things actually start coming up when you think about what are some of the qualities of this person. So in a connection story, when you speak about things, and every one of us, the beauty about life is you don't have to go outside anywhere else to look for stories. Our lives are, every single moment is a story, right? The fact that I'm talking to this beautiful audience here becomes a story as I move forward. So everything is a story. And what you need to do is just try and look at what is the story that is relevant for the audience that I'm talking to. And what is it that I want to project over there? The moment you can get the two to connect, go back and take any story from your lifetime that has a relevance to that particular space, and that also has some of those values and qualities that you want others to look at you as. So if I was going to go out there and ask for a bank loan from somebody, I'm going to bank and I'm going to ask them a loan. So I'm going to talk to them about a few of my struggles with business and how I was able to come out of those struggles, and how I'm actually having some very strong, powerful customers who speak these to me. And I can share some beautiful stories around what I'm actually doing with those people. So we've got to just look at relevance, and we've got to see what is it that I want to bring out at that point in time, and then pick up a story and see how well that resonates with the audience. And it has to. There's no way it won't. So that was my bit of opening this particular story about today's topic, because I wanted to connect with you, I wanted to make it relevant, and I wanted to also share with you some interesting aspects about it. Let's get on to something called leading people, because that's what we're talking about, leading people through stories or through storytelling. And here there are two words that I want to really emphasize on. One is leading, and the other one is people, of course. So it's very different when I'm doing something called a managing role. Then I'm maybe managing processes and other resources. I probably even manage people, but not to the extent of giving them direction, energy, and the power that will really help them to get into a certain space that they probably want to. When I look at the word leader, for me, leader, I think every one of us are playing a role of a leader, whether we know it or not, whether we have a title or not, whether we have a position or not. I think leadership has nothing to do with position. It has nothing to do with the titles that we have. It has nothing to do with how many people you have reporting into you, how large your organization is. Well, I got 10,000 people, and therefore, since I'm the CEO of that leader, that company, I'm a leader. Whereas I'm the person who's probably having nobody under me, and therefore I don't think I can be called a leader. And I think that's the first thing we have to change internally. Each and every one of us are leaders. As an educator, I think I'm an absolute leader, because as we move forward in life, one is that if you look at a child, the child first looks up to the parent and wants to become like the parent, and they emulate everything the parent does. Then it's their friends. And then they reach a stage when they start seeing the teachers, they start seeing the professors, and they say, wow, if they are our teachers and professors, they are like our gurus, the ones who actually dispel darkness from our lives. So they start respecting them to the extent where they get influenced by everything they do, because then it's not just your word, but it's your actions that also influence people. So when we speak of leadership, it's about influence. If you are having the ability to influence others, you are a leader. If it could be one person, it could be 10 people, it could be 100 people. But when you're exercising influence on something, because leadership is about influencing others. And let me ask you a thing. In this world, we cannot move forward unless we are influencing people constantly. Every single moment is an influence moment. You want someone to do something, you want to influence them. You want somebody even to bring you a glass of water. You may just say, hey, can you get me that glass of water? But you are influencing them. Somewhere in the past you've done it, or you're just doing it now. But there is an influence, which is why people will do things for you. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it, right? And yes, you could probably force people to do things. You can bound them and bind them and say, okay, listen, you better do it. Otherwise, this is what I'm going to do for you. And so then they are forced to doing that. That's not real influence that I'm talking about. And if you really see the word influence, it's actually something that comes from within. Right? How do people start doing things that you want them to do because they want to do it, because they like to do it, because they feel a sense of satisfaction by doing it? And so it's not something that you can force and impose upon them or threaten them with or force them with fear. That's not influence. That's not leadership, right? But if you have the art of making them do it where they feel they want to do it, then you're a real influencer. And so storytelling is absolutely critical when you're trying to influence people. Because let me tell you, we all are carrying stories in our head. And if I don't want to do something, it's because of a story inside. I have a story of how you have treated somebody else, and therefore you did this and you did that to that person. And so I don't want to do this for you at all. I'm already holding a story inside. So all our behaviors are because of certain stories we are having inside. And now I want you to do something. I want to influence you. All right. So you've been holding a story for so many years. I want to come and change that story of yours. How do I do it? With some statistics, with facts and figures? No. I want to change that story with another story. So I replace the old recording, that story you have, with a new story that I would bring into that whole picture. And so when I bring in that new picture, it suddenly starts having a dissonance with that old story. And depending on how powerful the story is, and how real it is, and how true it is, people will start getting influenced. They'll start moving towards a space that you actually want to move them to. So that's a very interesting aspect of how we can actually use these stories and why we should use stories. Facts and figures. And let me talk to you about this. This is a fictitious name, of course, but this is true. So there was this ZNOC, name of the organization. It's one of the largest oil producing organizations somewhere in the Gulf. And what ZNOC does is it has a lot of people who go into various organizations and they influence them to buy the oil from them. And ZNOC was this particular institute that had a lot of oil, that was producing oil. There was this organization which was actually supplying safety equipment to various organizations across the Gulf, right? So equipment that will actually, it's safety equipment, right? So the company was not doing very well, the safety equipment company. And they wanted to really see how large oil and gas organizations started using their safety equipment. The salespeople are not really getting themselves out there and doing what they should do. And so there are two choices that the sales head has got. The sales head could bring them into this meeting. He's trying to lead those people. So there are about, let's say, 50 salespeople, and he's standing there and he wants to influence them. And he stands up and he says, guys, we have a huge problem. Our sales are dipping. There's this massive market, and we are only holding 10% of the share. 90% of the share is taken over by competitors, and our competitors are not as good as us. They don't have such good equipment. Their equipment is useless. Our equipment is superior in quality, in terms of reliability. We've got the best products, but we have only 10% of the market. Doesn't really make sense. Come on, guys, we want you to go out there, sell more, and get more clients. Now, I'm trying to influence my team, and I can use those statistics and those figures. Vis-a-vis, I can bring in a real story, right? And so this is what I would do in one of the morning meetings with my people. I say, guys, yesterday I had a chat with the safety officer of ZNOC. And last week, there was an incident. One person walked into those tanks of theirs with their safety gear. And as soon as he went down, he was actually being followed by 6 other people. But he got to a space where he realized that the gas was so powerful and strong that he could not survive it. And so he at least wanted to look up and call out to them, and they had cameras inside and they could actually see everything, but they could not really go and act because the kind of distance from where they were to where it was happening was quite large. So before this guy could actually signal to the other 6 people, he went flat and he died in that particular tank. The other 6 didn't know what was happening, and they just came down the tank as well. And very innocently, they also got in and they all succumbed and they all reached the same destiny as the first person. 7 people had to die. And the sales head is sharing the story of ZNOC and the 7 people who passed away. And he says, you know what? If they would have had our safety gear, that would have never taken place. Our safety gear is the number 1 in the market, but we did not have the opportunity to go and showcase it to ZNOC. All we did is we just went to the secretary and because we were not able to get through, we did not do anything, we did not force ourselves in, we didn't have the conviction of what we have for them. We just felt that we are salespeople. We didn't realize that we are there to save lives of people. And today I stand here as a sales head and I'm having these 7 lives as my responsibility. And I feel extremely guilty that we didn't do our job well. And so there are these 7 people who I'm answerable to them, their families. Guys, it's up to you now. How do you want to really go about selling what we have? Such lovely equipment. We could save many more lives. Let's not have the next 7 tomorrow. Please do something. Now, that was what he said. And there was magic in that particular organization. Magic. I mean, from 10%, they move up to 60% market share in about 2 years from there onwards. That's a huge growth. What difference did this story make to them? What happened? Why do you think that statistics and figures about 10% versus what we should be doing and how beautiful our products and qualities are, that would really have fallen flat? Whereas a story that was really shared made a huge difference. So that brings out the importance of the power of these stories while we want to influence people. Are you able to get it? Are you able to understand how powerful these stories could be vis-a-vis just trying to lead people with numbers and statistics and data? Yeah?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Very nice. Thank you. Priya, thank you. I just wanted to put everybody on mute because we could get some sound from somewhere. All right, thank you. So, in the area of learning and development, what I do is I share with a lot of my audience the importance of stories, but I just don't tell them that you have to tell stories, but I tell them stories without them realizing that I'm telling them stories. So, there's this audience of customer service executives. They're all in client servicing. And I speak to them about my experience in Canada. So I went to Ottawa where my nephew was graduating. He did his aeronautical engineering, very happy for himself. So my sister called me and my mother. And so we flew in from India. And in Ottawa, they had actually this Airbnb made for us, and we were there actually. And there was this place we were supposed to stay for just 1 day, right? And we had a lot of laundry, right? A lot of clothes we wanted to wash. So we went down to the supermarket and we were looking for a very small packet of washing powder or washing soap or something that'll help us. I mean, washing powder at least, because we had a washing machine, or the washing liquid. But we wanted a very small one because just for 1 day, we didn't want too much. And so we were looking and we couldn't find it. And the lady came up there and asked us, who was a sales lady, she asked us, how can I help you? I said, you know what, we're looking for a detergent. We just want it for a night. So we're looking for something really small quantity. So she came, she said, oh, we have something. She just started looking at one of the shelves and she didn't find it. And so she said, yeah, I think we're out of stock. I'm so sorry. And so then she had this huge box, right? She said, what about this one? We smiled. We said, no, that's too much because we want it for a day. That will probably take us a month to finish. So she understood. She smiled. She said, I understand. You know what she did? She did something which really shocked us. She took that one. She opened it. It was a new seal pack. She opened the whole pack. She opened the lid of it. She took one of these Pepsi, cups, empty cups. She actually filled this whole thing in that cup. And she showed it to us. She said, will this be enough for you? We said, wow, that is more than enough. Probably it's much more because that'll also take us about 3 days to finish. She put a nice tape on it and, with some silver foil. And she said, take this. And so we said, okay, thank you so much. So how much do we pay for you? She said, don't even bother. I wanted to buy something for myself for my house. And so I think this is a good opportunity. And it's just that it's coincidence you're here and I need this. And so that's on me. Take it. She calls out to this cashier guy, say, hey, let them take this detergent. It's on me. And I'm going to take this. Please bill me for this particular jar of the soap, liquid soap. it left us amazed. We were shocked, and we didn't know that we could actually have such like service from somebody who could really take that particular space up. So that is a true story. And then we went back and we were there for a day, but everything we wanted now, we'd go down there and we'd get from there, and we got so friendly with those people. We really started connecting very deeply with that particular store. Here, you have this lady who did that for us, knowing we're going to be there only for one day, which means that she's not looking at, oh, this could be a long-term customer. Let me share something with him. Let me help this guy out because he'll come back tomorrow and buy more. None of those things. So there's no hidden agendas. She just did something that she thought was possible for her to do. She went out of her way and she did it. So now, and I asked this to the audience, let's say I ask you all, what do you think stood out for you when you heard about this wonderful story of this lady in that supermarket? All right. And so here are these group of people who are in customer service. And what do you think they're thinking? They're just connecting back to their workspace. And they're thinking about the number of times they actually helped somebody out when they could help. Vis-a-vis the times that they were arrogant and they were very, the sulky, and they felt that they were doing people favors when they were serving them. Versus a story of this lady in terms of how proactive she was, how switched on she was, how friendly she was, how accountable she was for what she was doing. And she was able to actually take ownership. She was not the owner of the place, but she knew that if she's going to buy it, I'm going to pay for it, put it in my account, I can do what I want. And she's not going to do that every day. And that's not the point. The point is that when there's some possibility, because of the right attitude, what a wonderful thing we can do to serve people. Now, I'm trying to influence, ladies and gentlemen, I'm trying to influence people in customer service. Do you think this story will influence them? 100% yes, it will. Now, on the other side, I could stand out there and say, guys, as people in customer service, we've got to be proactive. Proactivity means that you have to be able to take the initiative, move forward, get yourselves into the customer's shoes and be empathetic with them, trying to understand what do they want, and then do what you got to do. Now, that's my whole gyan around proactivity. And I could obviously share so many other aspects of proactivity. Vis-a-vis, just share that one story. I'm leading those people. I'm leading them in a direction of wanting to see how can they be more proactive. And when I share a story like this, it's an epitome of being proactive, an epitome. And this lady was the embodiment of proactivity. That's how I look at it. Right? So people are now going to think about, how can I be more proactive in my job? Now, they may be selling tickets of a certain tour, or they could be customer service who have in a showroom, or they could just be back-end customer service people of a bank, anything. But this thing helps them a lot. And so I try and reverse this when I'm talking to people who are leaders, people who have an opportunity to touch the lives of many people, but they don't. And then I share the story about me with Stella, all right? And this is and when I share stories, as much as possible, I don't try and make stories. I try to bring them from my real life. And I feel that's when there's a lot of power and impact in it, because otherwise it's not going to really resonate much. You can talk about stories of others. It's important to do that, and that adds a lot of credibility, and there are very powerful stories. We should do that. But I think we have enough of stories in our lives that we should start sharing. And we should actually create this, this beautiful system where I can store all my stories with themes, So I'll share stories about this conversation I was having on the phone with this lady who was at the back end. She was a customer service agent in one of the banks. So I call up and she's talking to me. And then I said, so, this is a problem, my credit card, this, that, all those things. And sometimes we take them for granted, and we don't talk with them the way we should talk to them. But I remember this conversation with this lady, and I asked her, Stella, sorry, I didn't know her name then. I said, what's your name? She said, my name is Stella. I said, Stella, wow, that reminds me of my classmate. So in college, in Mysore, I had a girl, her name was Stella. And we had this geography teacher who would say, she'd take the attendance, and he would take the attendance of all of us. A very funny chap. Wherever he says Stella, and she's not there, he says Stella Illa. And obviously she didn't understand. She says, no, I don't understand. I said, where are you from? She said, I'm from Sri Lanka. Okay, I said, Stella, Illa. Illa means it's not there. Stella means it's there. So sorry, I just shared this story because it's a very strong story whenever I think of this word Stella. She heard that story and she said something which was so beautiful. She said, Prakash, it's been a whole day for me and I've been talking to so many people on the phone. Nobody has connected me so well. Nobody has been so kind with me. Thank you so much for being so kind. You've made my day. I said, Stella, thank you so much for recognizing that. But I was just genuinely sharing something that I noticed when you told me your name. But have a great day and continue. And I just kept the phone down. And for me, that was a story about gratitude that people need to have for people around. You know, it's so easy to stand there and shout at people because you know what, you guys don't do this properly. You are useless. Your service stinks. You're absolutely horrible. And this, that, and the other. And it's so easy for us to do that, especially with people who are, you know, at the receiving end, who've done mistakes, who probably are not as high in terms of the pecking order. And so we are more powerful in that sense. And so it becomes so easy for us to push them further down. Vis-a-vis, we have the opportunity to bring magic into their lives, real opportunity. And every moment we pick the phone and talk to somebody, we have that opportunity. But just to be sincere and genuine and be present, just to go with the flow and to see how you can actually be there. I think that sense of presence will make you do so many wonderful things. And so I shared that story when I see people are in leadership positions who don't appreciate their people, who are not ready to go and even just recognize and forget appreciating, just, you know, being human. And that doesn't actually take place as it should. So that's the way we can actually lead people. And I'm talking about people in business, right? People, you want to bring out values, you talk about certain stories that stood out on values. You and I, we all demonstrate values every single day. Today, you're demonstrating a value by just being here. What is the value you're demonstrating by being here? You're demonstrating a value of commitment, of focus, of listening, of being available, of being keen and curious and humble. Because I see so many of you doctors, all right? You're doctors and you're having all these beautiful titles, and you could be students and you could be very smart and you could be very intelligent. But the fact that you are actually in this session, actually brings out so many qualities of yours. So what I'm trying to suggest is that in your life, all you have to see is just do a flashback and see all those actions you've done. And you displayed a million virtues and values every moment. You've been doing that and you will continue to do that. Just be more aware of it and see how you can share that with somebody. You want to talk to your teenage son? You don't go and tell your teenage son, be respectful. I want you to be respectful. I want you to respect those people. No, I think you should share a nice story about respect with them. They'll get it. They will get it. The stories, the good thing about stories, they say stories are emotion. Stories are facts packed in emotion, right? They are facts. You say so, you're speaking about facts to people, but you're wrapping them in emotions and you're wrapping them in nice color and contrast. And you're able to make people see things that they cannot see with just facts and figures, right? You don't see things in facts and figures. You don't see things in words. If I just use the word mother, what are you seeing? You're seeing a story. When I say mother, you first look at your own mom, you see her face, you see the image, you see the picture, you probably see a context. Where is she sitting? She's probably doing something, she's wearing something. You actually see those in images. That's how we understand things. We just don't understand them with numbers and words. And that's why storytelling is so critical. It's so important. So there are a million stories, and I could keep going on and on and on. But let me just share one more story. No, I'm just seeing time. Time is less. All right, time is less. We've got about 12 minutes left. So let me share with you leadership, something on leadership, and a little bit of some dynamics on storytelling. You see, when you do leadership, one of the things that leaders are doing is they're constantly helping people to change, right? I mean, a leader brings change, usually, for the right reason. They don't just want change for the sake of changing. But what are leaders doing is they're trying to bring in change in a very beautiful fashion. And most of the people in the world resist change. We love to maintain status quo. there's a lot of inertia to change. Right? We don't want to move from where we actually stand. And so leaders have to be fantastic in the way they can actually facilitate change. And I believe today, especially with the pandemic and all that's coming, I mean, change has been phenomenal, right? And the change is it's like, wow, it's sudden. It's like, this is how it's going to be from tomorrow onwards. So just before we settle in tomorrow and start doing it, hey guys, we got to be back into this way now. And then we're doing that and say, okay, now we got to switch here. Oh my God. And so it's an amazing opportunity for people to really display leadership in these times. So when you're looking at change, there's a very nice way to build a story. There's a beautiful way to build a story. And Steve Jobs used to do that exceptionally well when he would lead people, he would lead teams, he would lead his customers, he would lead the audience towards another way of doing things, right? So he would come up and he'll say, and this is how his story would go. He'll say, in the past, we used to really find it difficult to listen to music in the way we want to listen to it, and the speed we would want to listen to it, in terms of how it would be mobile for us, and in terms of how many songs we could actually listen to at one point in time that we wanted to carry with us. And because of that, we used to, find it really difficult. We used to carry these big things. We would carry those, massive. Sometimes we had a Walkman at that point. We had to have a huge Walkman, put them there, cassettes, or we'd have MP3 players where you have probably 100 songs, but that was also quite bulky. That was not the best place to be. And so people were not really comfortable. They could not really go for a jog carrying a Walkman. It was very difficult for them. So now we've come up with something that can take care of all those songs of yours in the most sleekest fashion. And you can actually slip it into the smallest size of your pocket. And we have the iPod. In the future, people will have 1,000 songs in their pocket, and they can listen to them whenever they want, wherever they are. Now, if you see, when he did that, he enthused the audience. Everybody said, I want to have that in my pocket, and I want to have it yesterday. Right? That's how people will actually start running when they listen to a story of this size. So what does he speak about? So there are these 4 steps to it, right? In the past, this is what was taking place. And then something happened. All right. In the past, this is how things used to take place. And then something happened, right? Which could be the issues that people have, the problems they faced, the areas that were not really working well in the past. And so now, this is what we brought. And therefore, in the future, we're going to actually see this. We're going to have this. We're going to have the ability to do this. The possibilities of this is going to happen like this. So you talk about the past. You say something take place, and then now this, and in the future. So 4 steps. In the past, and there's something happened, and therefore now this is what we're going to do, and therefore in the future, this is how it's going to be. This is a beautiful way to construct a story when you actually want people to really change or transition. And so I was at one point in time, so I was in sales at one point in time. I moved into quality, operations, and I had P&L responsibilities. And then I switched completely into HR because I love learning and development. I love training. And so I remember in HR, we were actually having a performance management system, which was in pencil and paper. And we wanted to mechanize it. We wanted to, make it more automated. And so I remember the story that I started sharing with a group of our, managers, heads of department that I was saying to, and I spoke to them about, in the past, we've been using pencil and paper in doing our performance management. And whilst that was working perfectly okay at that point in time, we had seen a few problems in that system. There would be sheets of paper that people would lose, huge bulk of documents that we actually keep as records for people. There were sometimes, because of the fact that it was that way, it was very difficult to retrieve, for us to access. And for us also, sometimes there would be duplications and all those issues. So the huge amount of problems were being faced by people because of this whole system. So now we've actually discovered a very simple system which can actually duplicate everything that we've done in the past, but it's going to take away all these problems. And that's this new talent software that we're going to start using. and it's going to be completely bespoke, tailor-made for our needs. And once we have it, in the future, you want accessibility, you want retrieving, you want to see speed, you want to see moving forward, you want to see motivation, everything's going to be a part of the system. It's going to be so easy. And with your AI that it is already built in, you can actually go back and look at numbers for the past 3 years, for the past 5 years, and it will pop out and tell you who has been the top performer. You don't have to go back and sit and do all the statistics and read all those performance, records of the forms to see who has done well in the last 3 years. It's all there. It's all taken care of. And you've got some of the best systems, and it can forecast for you and tell you who are the people that you think you should focus more on if you're looking at high potentials. So it's got amazing capabilities. And so when I weaved this story for them, everybody was gung-ho. They said, Prakash, we are with you. We're backing you up. We'll see to it that all our people are also with you. We want that new system. Now, that would have been very difficult because people don't want to change. They want to say, why change a system when it's working for us? Eventually, they would change, but that would take a long time to get them on board. You need to move people from a state of awareness to adoption. So they first are aware, then you have to build interest. Then from interest, you need to really start trying things out, and then they get into adoption. But even through that, they actually start going to denial, they reject, they push you down and say, we don't want it. And only slowly they start coming and exploring things. So there's a huge journey. But when you actually have the right stories to tell them, as I said, what people are holding is already another story. They're holding stories. We're all having stories inside, and that's what makes us behave the way we're behaving. If I want to stay doing what I'm doing right now because I have a story that this is the best way to doing it. But if I can bring in a story that's more powerful and stronger, that can finish that story out. That's the best way to go forward. All right, so with that, I wouldn't want to say anything else, but I want to just keep it open for Q&A, for questions and answers.
That was great, Mr. Prakash. Yeah, everyone has a story, and the way you brought out it was wow, great. As usual, we had a wonderful, especially I enjoyed it, and we will look forward for the Q&A from the audience.
Sure, wonderful.
Prakash, you brought in management, you brought in so many aspects of management, and you just incorporated storytelling into it. It just taught us how stories can be used to teach management. Thank you so much. It was such a wonderful session.
Thank you.
And
my pleasure.
You've always, you're listening to you is always a pleasure. I must not miss.
Thank you so much.
Prakash.
Thank you.
Participants, you can unmute, and if you have any questions, you can ask.
I too endorse with Dr. Neena Gayatri. It's a pleasure listening to you, sir. We felt, why did you stop speaking? And we wanted to listen more, but still, it's we have and we had to end up because of time constraint. Thank you so much, sir.
This is another example of how somebody can delight an audience. This is a story by itself. Thank you, Prakash.
Mr. Prakash, it was a very lovely presentation. And like Dr. Dora said, like we really don't want to stop here hearing all those stories. But my question is like, when we listen to a story, the spirit gets topped up, but it gets faded in due course of time, right? So how to maintain that interest and passion, what we are doing in our work, or when we do with our students, all these things.
Interesting. I think that's a very good question. So your stories could probably just hold the consciousness for some time. How do I actually hold it? Well, not necessarily that it only holds for some time. So firstly, of course, a story will help you to get immediate action, right? Your story should get immediate action. So if Steve Jobs wants to influence people and get them to actually start buying the iPod, he was successful because he had a story, everybody bought it, and they went there and they started seeing, when I'm going to get the next one, I want it, I want it, I want it, and they got it. So he was able to get them to do the action. Now, in this particular story with customer service, if you want people to change and to change an attitude from being, very impolite sometimes, and it's not that they are that way, but it's just an attitude that they feel, I'm doing you a favor because I'm serving you, right? So you better respect me. And if that's the attitude with which you come, it's going to be very difficult to change that attitude through a story. And I think that's secondary, Priya. What we need to see is, do I have a story that can actually touch them deeply? And that's what we should do. We do our best to touch them deeply, which is better than just telling them that you have to be proactive, you've got to change your attitude, you have to have a good attitude. Share a story so they get touched deeply inside, all right? And then, of course, there's a certain process in how we need to, support and facilitate that change of attitude. And it can take a long time. It can take a long time. Don Bennett was the one who was summiting Mount Rainier. That's about 4,350 odd meters above sea level, very cold on top. He went up and came down. And you know what is the big thing? He was an amputee. He didn't have one leg. He still went up the mountain and came down. And it was a shock. He was the first amputee to actually go up such a height and come back. And when people asked him, hey, how did you do it? How did you do it? He said, one hop at a time. I just took one hop at a time. I didn't think of changing myself and immediately summiting the mountain. I would have fainted. I just knew that I had to take one hop forward. And every time I just remember myself, one hop. And then lo and behold, I was on the top. But sometimes to take that one hop, I had to take 15 deep breaths and then take that one hop. So difficult it was. But I was only focusing on that one hop. And so for us, transformation and change also is not easy. But as long as we can help people see that just move a little every day, guys, just a little bit. I want you to just progress 1%, 0.5%. Make it easy for them. Don't expect them to become that changed attitude overnight. And so along with that story, you probably need the story of Don Bennett as well to help them realize that it'll take time. It's an evolutionary process. It's not revolutionary. So you need to also share something like this to make it easy. Otherwise, they're going to get overwhelmed and they'll think, oh my God, there's such a big gap between me and that person. I can't do it. Or my facilities are not the same. I don't have the environment that that person has. If I do that, my boss will stand up and scream and shout at me and, probably get me off the job. So let them know it's a process. It'll take time. There's a lot of changes that have to take place with that. And so they should be able to settle themselves in that way. I hope that answers.
Thank you so much. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Storytelling is an art. Stories are taking us to a different world and makes the things easy to understand. You just taught us how to incorporate our knowledge with the stories. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I like those words. It really takes us to another world. It takes us to another world. And all of us have those beautiful worlds inside us. It's all there. Explore it and see how you can take anybody to any place you would want through your stories. Okay, let me ask you a question.
Just one.
If that's okay. Oh, yeah, Priya, go ahead.
And this is Nina.
Nina, okay.
Great. Prakash, I was just thinking, how we're most of us are teachers here and in management, and we'd like to know how to incorporate or select the stories.
Yeah, so it depends on the context, Nina. What is it that you want to actually deliver to them? What are you looking to bring in that particular class? If it's a certain subject that you want them to be interested in, okay, let's say English, right? And I heard a few people are heading the Department of English over here or something. So if you want to, talk to them about English, and you want them to really get to really focus in English and make it, a subject that's going to support them a lot, bring in a story about English, about a struggle of yours with English and how you were able to overcome it, and how has it benefited you the moment you actually became a master in English. What's been the way it has actually transformed your life, how it has made you look at yourself in not just English, but also in other areas of your life, and how others have started looking at you and how you're able to use that to benefit so many other people. So one, you could just speak about a subject story. If you want people to be interested in physics, maths, geography, chemistry, you've got enough of stories there, your own, other people's stories. And so you can talk about that. You can talk about behavior stories. You want people to listen to you. You want people to open up. You want people to be there and focus. You don't want them to be distracted here, there, and the other. So you can talk about a story. One story about how I love about, I talk about focus. I talk about, you had these 5 Pandavas, and you had some other, even the Kauravas, and then you had their guru who's saying, I have that fish there on the tree. I want you guys to aim there and then, use your arrows, your archery, and I want you to actually, hit the middle of the eye of that um, fish. And so he started asking everybody, what do you see? So people see the tree, they see this, they see that. But when you ask Arjun, what do you see? Arjun says, I can see the black spot in the eye of the fish and nothing else. That's the only thing I see. And so he's just trying to show. And when everybody tried the arrow, everybody went this side, that side, and every other side. But when Arjun hit, he got it right in the bullseye. And so that's the importance of focus. So what is the story I want to share with people? And of course, make it culturally sensitive as well. So we don't want to talk about something that can actually disturb anybody else. So we want to be a little culturally sensitive. We want to see what is the story what's the behavior I'm trying to actually bring forward over here. That's one thing, behavior. Third one is a value that you want to actually help people to bring out in that particular space. What is the value that you want them to actually bring up? So depending on that, go back. And so this is what you got to do. You've got to start first preparing. It's very difficult off the cuff unless you've done it many times. And you also can do off the cuff. There could be stories, but there could be many beautiful stories that may be difficult to get off the cuff. So it's nice before you come to class, think. If I'm doing a class, the first time I'm going to open this new subject, I'm going to talk to them about a new subject. What story can I share so that they want to know more about this subject or about this chapter? This chapter is very different from everything else. How can I connect this chapter with the rest through a story? So think about that. And then the moment you do that, then people are glued to it. They want to know more. They want to do that. They want to do it. So do a little preparation. Think of stories that you want to have that's chapter relevant, that's subject relevant, that is behavior relevant, that is values relevant. And when you bring those in there, it's going to really help. And I think we are doing a great, one of the opportunities we have is, if you go back and ask these students as we grow, ask me as I grow up and come into this world, how much of my geography do I use here? Nil. Almost nil. But do I remember that geography teacher? Yes. Why? Because of some stories that she or he told me, because of some of those incidents that took place that are very poignant, very strong in my head. And so that's what people really take back. So you have the opportunity to shape values of these people. And I think you must also focus, whilst you're talking about subjects, focus a lot on how you can make them wonderful human beings and bring out some stories that are quite relevant to that particular scenario. You don't just throw a story for the sake of storytelling, but see how you can connect it in some fashion and give it to them, and they'll take them with that. And then that'll go very deep inside. The students are very susceptible to these things. They're very malleable. They're very moldable. So that's when you have to give them the best of stories.
Can you tell me how young kids can be a public speaker or a best storyteller? What all they are supposed to do for their development?
Okay. I think very naturally, all the kids and children and young adults, everybody, we are all having stories. We all are coming across stories every single moment of our lives. What we can do is we can start sharing stories, and we can ask them a lot of reflective questions is something we should start talking to them about and asking them. So share with me an incident, a time when you were able to display this quality of focus. And it could be a time when they were playing a video game, when they're watching their favorite movie. It was reading this book of Harry Potter, whatever it is. And then you ask them these reflective questions, and then you start seeing how they actually start verbalizing, speaking, and sharing their stories. You can sometimes even just very openly ask them, tell me a time when, when you're talking about tell me a time when this happened, you're talking about a story exactly. Or share with me an incident when. So they're talking about an incident. And then tell them, can you just give me more details about that whole incident? So you're really coaxing them, asking them questions, making them more reflective. And then they actually start learning to speak and speak the story off. And then you could, if you want to make it a facilitative approach, you can say, well, thank you. I love the story. And this is something I want to talk to everybody else in my class. Do I have your permission? Can I do that? And they'll be shocked. They say, wow, is my story so powerful? I say, yeah, I love that story. Can I share it with somebody else if I want to? Oh, please do that. Can I use your name? No, okay, you can use my name. Okay, listen, if you got to shape the story up a little bit better, how do you think you'll frame it? Give them that opportunity to go back and reconstruct the story. If they actually told it to you in a very funny fashion, go back and reconstruct it. And so they can make it more chronological. They can have a proper opening, a good body, and a good closure. And then you can ask them, so how would you like to close the story? What would be the tagline? All these things. So I think that's a good way that we can, make them start talking stories to us, and then they become good at that ability.
Thank you, sir.
Sir,
Yeah.
this is Neha here. The thing is, sir, I normally practice this habit of using stories to my students in the class. And I do a lot of preparation when I create a story, or else when I search for a story, or else I go to some sites where I get a nice story. But one challenge that I have faced in my career of teaching students through story is that the perspective that I have in my mind when I am portraying a story to my students, the same perspective they will not carry with them. Let me make it much more simpler, which means now, say, for example, I want to tell them a story of, say, of an ant and the way the ants store the food. And now I want to tell them how exactly the management principles are being there in the theoretical books. So I want to connect that management story through a story of an ant. But the major challenge, sir, throughout my career, what I found is the students love the story that I tell, the students enjoy the story that I tell, but at the end of it, they tend to forget the perspective of managerial concepts that I want them to remember through a story. So my question to you is, sir, how do we actually make these students understand the perspective in my mind and the perspective in their mind, and to connect it to a concept of management?
Very nice. A good question. I think it's important for us to share the story, but then to actually have a reflective exercise after that, to have an approach where you're able to facilitate them to then draw out whatever the concepts, key ideas that you picked up from the story. So here's the story, and then I pause, and then I try and say, okay, so what really stands out for you from the story? What are some of the things that you would think is applicable in our lives from what we've actually just shared? How is this relevant with our topic on teamwork? And so you want to get that from them and then listen to them and take a facilitative approach and build on everything that they share with you, or ask them to build more, to share more, to give more. And so when you have that open way of the story that I have and then listen to their perspective, some of them might have a very different perspective from what they took from the story, which is perfectly okay. You acknowledge it, bring it on, and say, good, I like the way you think. It's very interesting. I've never thought of it that way. And then get to know how. And then I think you have to have a very strong closure from there on, and that's when your concept is going to come. And so, okay, so once they've given their all, divergent thinking takes place, you've got to be able to converge it and then come up with that fine concept, or the 3 or 4 points, and not too many. I think if you're trying to get too much, one story, and I want to have 10 things people should learn from that one story, it's not going to happen. It should probably have 1 or 2 real strong concepts you want to draw from that, and then build that over there. And then that's not where you stop. Then you actually have to test it, right? You test it. So your story is creating the experience. All right. So usually, if you see the Kolb learning cycle, the experience, once you finish the experience, you talk about a concept. You talk about observation. So from this story, what have you guys seen? What have you observed? What are some of the learnings? So that's the first part. Experience, you do the learning and observation, and then you do the conceptualizing. So then from where all this will apply? Where else can you take this concept and, fist and you think it'll work? And then there's another step after it called testing it or experimenting with it. So then give them an exercise to take this concept now and go and experiment. Go, guys, I want you to go and try and this tomorrow and come back and share with me what has been your experience. So then you're making the concept a little more clear, and you're making it stronger for them by making them go back and use it, apply it, and then come back. So just conceptually don't leave them, but take them to the one more step forward.
Thank you, sir. Maybe I was just lagging with the experimenting part, which I have to work on a little bit more. Thank you, sir.
Sir, I'm Dr. Shivashankari. I have a question. Does a storyteller need any technique to be followed while narrating story, or he has to how the storyteller can interact with the students in any other forms? Sir?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very interesting question. See, what happens is a storyteller must, the only art I feel a storyteller needs to have is the art of being able to share a story without people thinking that he's telling me a story. Right. So I'm telling you the story, but I'm not saying, okay, let me share a story with you. Don't tell them that. You got to just see what is the situation, what's the environment, what is the need of the hour, and you bring in that story in such a beautiful fashion that it's so smooth they don't even realize that they actually were speaking a story. But the moment you're talking about the times and those places, and you're talking about those people, they're creating all those things in their head, and suddenly there's the neurons of the head brain is very wow, generating much more than you were thought possible. So it's just about making it relevant. So don't just keep saying stories for the sake of saying stories, especially if you haven't, you're in education, you want people to learn. So it has to be relevant. It has to be spoken in a way where people don't even think it's a story. They shouldn't feel that I'm actually digressing, I'm going out of the subject, and then I'm trying to come back and correct, and I'm trying to force fit something. You're not trying to force fit something. You're just trying to go in a very smooth fashion. And you're able to bring these stories that are relevant and that can be spoken with a lot of fun and flair. But yes, I think also in stories, we have to construct a story properly, which is why I spoke about the preparation part. When you're talking about a story, the more vivid it is, if you can paint a picture in people's minds, that's what the story does. But at the same time, you don't want to make it so long drawn that people get lost. So time it well, sufficient enough to hold people's attention, and detailed enough to actually have people to go and actually feel that story for themselves, have that experience of that story. And I think a good opening, a good body, a good closure, that would be usually what a story should have.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your immense knowledge. All these valuable insights gave us a new perspective of storytelling. As William author rightly said, feeling gratitude, not expressing it, is like wrapping a present, not giving it. So, to express our gratitude, I now request Dr. R. Kamaraj, Assistant Professor and Head of Department of BCom Computer Application, to propose vote of thanks.
Thank you, madam. A great and blessed evening to one and all presented here. I am Dr. R. Kamaraj, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce, Computer Application. And it's my great honor to put a few words as vote of thanks on behalf of School of Commerce and Management of SA College of Arts and Science. Storytelling is the most powerful way to put ideas into the world today. First of all, I thank our today's chief guest, Mr. Prakash Chugani, Associate Asian Innovation Private Limited, Singapore, who spread his precious time to grace this occasion and spoke about many things about a very sensible and strong story. I would also like to thank and to extend my gratitude to our management correspondent, Mr. Venkatesh Raja sir, our beloved principal, Dr. Maladi Shalvakumar madam, and our director, Dr. Sai Satyavati madam. I thank organization committee members of this one-week international webinar program, all our staff members and students of SA College of Arts and Science, and all the participation of session for making this session very vibrant and effective. Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen.
I would like to thank Mr. Satish and Dr. Neena Gayatri, madam, for this wonderful opportunity to hear from our guest, Mr. Prakash.
Thank you, Ms. Priya. I think it was a wonderful session with Mr. Prakash, and we take on behalf of AS Innovation, we thank the management of SA Arts and Science College, Mr. Venkatesh Raja, your correspondent, Dr. Sai Satyavati, director, Dr. Malati Silvakumar, the principal of SA College of Arts and Science, and special thanks to Ms. Priya for a wonderful coordination and support. Thank you. Dr. Neena, I would like to say.
And on behalf of, I'd like to say something, Satish. Thank you, Satish. I'd like to thank Prakash. Thank you for coming and doing such a wonderful job, Prakash. You were wonderful. And also on behalf of our CEO, Major Nagarajan Narayanan, who is based at Singapore, he was not able to connect today because of some technical issues. He sends his respects, and he also thanks the SA Arts and Science College, especially Venkatesh, who is a close friend of mine. Thank you, Venkatesh. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Priya, the principal, the director, and all the others for giving us this opportunity. We'd love to bring stories and storytelling into education and into all the schools and colleges all over the world. We connect through stories. We would thank you for this opportunity, waiting for more. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Pleasure is ours. Thank you, Mr. Satisha. We'll meet on Monday as well as usual.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Priya. Thank you.
SA College of Arts and Science admissions open. For more details log into sacas.ac.in.